Welcome back, everyone. We are here for part two of a 2020 story. Leon is wanting to continue where he left off to a degree and give some context to um, really the way this has impacted his life. But in order to better understand it, he realizing there's a need to give a better explanation of where he's been in his faith journey, I would say, and where he finds himself. He's not going to get to where he is now exactly, but he'll explain all that, and I will turn it over to Leon. So here's Leon.
Hello. I am wearing glasses, and this is a nod to one of my favorite movies, The Matrix. And if anyone's familiar with that movie, there's a character, Morpheus, and he is explaining to Neo, another character, the reality of things. And so I thought for theatrical purposes that it would be interesting because when telling my story that most people are very they are drawn to the miraculous part of it, and for me that negates the true star of the story, which is God. I am more of a passive participant, but God is the main character, and it's his power that went out and sustained me, resurrected me, improved me. Um, but I don't want the attention to be focused on the power, the miracle, but the one that gives the miracle, which is God. So this is kind of a part of the glasses, and hopefully it's not too distracting. So I'll continue with the story and kind of restate myself the whole thing that Jeff just mentioned. Um, I think to understand how this affected me, it's a fair question because, to be honest, most times, like what I mentioned, that I tell the story, everyone's focused on the miraculous part, but to be honest, no one's ever asked me how this affected me and how it changed me, or if there was any change in me. So this is to me a very kind of an interesting question. It took me a little bit to think about this because, generally speaking, no one ever asked that question. Um, so I think of this as really going to be kind of a journey of me trying to unpack and share what the journey that I've been on and where it's brought me to. And for this journey, the beginning needs to start with Messianic Judaism. Now, there's a lot of people that are Christians that they've heard of maybe the Jewish roots movement, but there's like a lot of people that are Christians that are interested in the roots of the faith, if you will, how Christianity came out of Judaism, and there's like a lot of interest in that. There's like all sorts of ministries and books on this subject matter. And so for me, this is kind of like the beginning story. So in my research, I would say that the modern Messianic Judaism movement started around the 1970s. And it kind of started with Jewish people that believed in Messiah, in Jesus, that they wanted to have an expression of having a belief in Jesus, but also retaining there in his Jewish context. And so believers, you didn't really have that option. You could go to a church and you would be with Gentile believers and you believed in God and Jesus and you both worshiped him, but your Jewish context, your Jewish understanding was not explained there. So a part of the Messianic Jewish movement was you can go to a place, sometimes it was maybe like in a church um, basement where you would have services, but you would have things that would be Jewish, like the Jewish prayers, the Jewish prayer books, menorahs. These are things have an arc to kind of explain in Judaism, the Torah, like in the Bible, where the Ten Commandments was in the Ark of the Covenant, like what we most know. And the later way that this was addressed, that you would have in synagogues where you would have an ark, a closet or some sort of an area that you would have a Torah scrolls inside of it. So that would kind of mirror the origins of the faith, having God's word in an ark. So those are the type of things that you would see in a Messianic synagogue, and you wouldn't normally see that at a church. And so this movement mainly was, a place where Jewish people could worship Jesus within the context of Judaism. So the interesting thing that happened is that when this started, that there was a lot of people that were Gentiles, non-Jewish people, that they were drawn to this, and that they joined this movement also. And so it's kind of like kind of how the Messianic Jewish movement started. It could have, I think that it kind of started like in the 70s. It could have started maybe a little earlier than that also, but generally that's kind of how it started, with Jewish people wanting to worship Jesus, or Yeshua in his the name that he'd be called on earth. How that began. So for myself, jump forward. I grew up in Seattle, and my family was not a religious family, but we went to church on a regular basis. And when I was 12, that my father was called into the ministry. So I was, as people call, preacher's kid. So, I grew up like in the church environment, and, being in the usher board at church and going to Bible study and those type of things were a part of my life. And, having a father that was a minister, that was just a part of the life that I grew up in. I went off to college, and like with most people, maybe when you grow up in a religious family, you like to test the waters and kind of see, you're kind of living on your own for the first time, and you're deciding, how you're going to live your life. And so for myself, I remember in college that I acknowledged that, I grew up in a church and grew up in Christianity. But is that because it was a choice by me, or is it just that that's where I grew up in? So I remember I took a religion of the world class. And so my idea was, I'm going to look at all the 5 main religions and really kind of assess them. The only criteria is that I believe that there is a God. And so anyway, going through all these different religions at that point, it was like, yeah, I think I'm on the right path. I think Christianity is where it's going to be. So later on, I kind of got maybe you might say like full of myself, but I was thinking that I'm pretty hot stuff in the New Testament. I think I have a good grasp at it, but something that I don't have a good grasp on is the Old Testament. Growing up in the church, I never really, I kind of knew the story, basic stories of the Old Testament: Abraham, Joseph, David, Isaiah, the prophets, stuff like that. I had like a vision or an idea of like what happened, but it was never something that I really delved into and really dove into. And so at this point, I was thinking that I was going to, kind of study the Old Testament, kind of get a sense of that. initially I was going to look at Kings, because Kings, there's probably like wars in it, like excitement, political intrigue, everything like that. So I thought that would like be a good point to start. Then after thinking about it, that, you know what, if you're going to start at the beginning, start at Genesis. So started reading Genesis, and like for myself being the child of a minister, there's like plenty of like commentaries in my house. So I was studying, reading Genesis, and I had like commentaries and everything. So I finished with Genesis. And so then at that point, I was thinking that I would go and read Kings again. But and so when that happened, I decided I was going to go to a bookstore, because I didn't specifically have a commentary specifically for Kings. So I wanted to go there, get one, and continue my studies. So I went to the bookstore, Christian bookstore. If anyone's familiar with Seattle, Radiant Christian Bookstore off of 85th, across the street from Fred Meyer. It's a comic book store now, but back then it was a bookstore, Christian bookstore. So I went there with the intention of getting the commentary on Kings, and this would really change my life. So I went to the bookstore, got my Kings commentary, and I was kind of looking through the Old Testament commentaries, and then I saw something that caught my eye, and it was the Jewish New Testament. And I remember thinking, what? Jewish New Testament? The New Testament is Christian. It's not Jewish. But I don't know, for me at the time, I was like, oh, this is very weird. I just wanted to show you, here's my prop. It's kind of old. You can see it's been beaten up. I've used it quite often. And I don't know if David Stern will be seeing this, but thank you for your service. So I got the commentary, and it was kind of, didn't really make sense to me, I guess, but I read it, and there was something like, I wouldn't say calling to me, but it was just something that like caught my attention. I was like, I've never heard anything like this, and I haven't seen anything like this. And this is really the only one there. At that time, it was $40. So I was like, that's kind of like a lot of money, much more than I was planning on spending. But my fear was that if I don't buy this, someone else might buy it, and I'll never see this again. I needed to do some more investigating. So I bought the book, and it kind of like opened up my eyes to a new world, really. Before this happened, I kind of had a sense of, the relationship between Judaism and Christianity. But I thought that there was, I guess, value in maybe understanding that relationship, but I never thought that much I didn't think deeper than that. So this happened, and as I'm reading the book, I had like all these questions. And although my dad was a minister, I mean, like some of these questions he wouldn't be able to answer. So I was continually searching. And so at that point, I had a cycle where I would go to Elliott Bay Book Company. I would go to Barnes and Noble in the U Village, that had like a really good Jewish studies section in the religion section. So I go there trying to find books to try to understand this whole relationship between the two religions. And so at that time, I felt that I need to go to like a synagogue to kind of maybe get some of my questions answered. So at that time, before Google, go to the yellow pages. So open up the yellow pages and look to see if I could find something in a Messianic synagogue, if there was anything such as that in the Seattle area. So there was one that was near the Seattle Center area. And then there was another one that really caught my attention. It was called Congregation Emmaus. And I remember at the time on KGNW, I don't know if that's if it's still like a Christian radio station, but back then it was a Christian radio station. I remember hearing ads about Congregation Emmaus. So I decided, okay, this is going to be a journey. I need to start this journey of just learning more about this. And that's where I need to go. And so initially I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to wait until I meet some Jewish person and they'll invite me to Congregation Emmaus, and I'll go there and I'll have all my questions answered. That's not going to happen. So I had to be courageous and I went there. And so I was very unsure about what this is going to be. I'm used to church. I don't know anything really about like synagogue or anything like that. So I went there, and people were very friendly and everything. And so actually, when I got there, it was like they had like this huge book section. Is like, oh, all these books that I've been going around to these, Elliott Bay Book Company and Barnes and Noble and trying to find books about this. And this had like at that point I was saying a ridiculously good book collection where I can start to, learn about these things. So, so I started going to Congregation Emmaus. And so at that point, I really decided that, I was going to have to start to like reassess or clarify things and clarify Jesus Christ. And I guess the first thing is to really just his name, Yeshua HaMashiach. HaMashiach is the Messiah in Hebrew, or Yeshua ben Yosef, Yeshua ben son Joseph, Yosef. I guess a part of kind of clarifying the historical Yeshua, I guess it starts with using his name. It just seems like it would be proper. I was talking earlier that if someone talks to me, I would like for them to use my name, Leon or Mr. Sampson. I don't necessarily want them to call me Bub or Dude or anything else. It's just a sign of respect. So in this case, I was thinking about, I should call him his actual name that he was given. The other thing I needed to start to clarify was the law. Growing up in church, you hear about the law, and it has like a very negative connotation. Something that's negative, something to get over, something to like avoid. But I would have to start to clarify that the law, or in Hebrew, Torah, it means instructions, teaching, guidance. The root of Torah is hodah, and it means to parent. So I would have to start to clarify, going from a not negative. I didn't really have a negative. It was just kind of like a neutral. I didn't really, think about like the law that much, because in Christianity we don't really talk about it other than we're free from it. So I'd have to start clarifying that. And like another clarification was just that Yeshua said in Matthew 5:17, don't think that I come to abolish the law, but to uphold it. I need to like understand, what does that mean? What is upholding? What does that mean? Next thing of clarification was like the Sabbath. I mean, to be honest, we hear about the 10 commandments, but in actuality, it's mainly the 9 commandments, because the commandment of the Sabbath, it's not something that we in the church or in Christianity, it's not something that we normally do. So a clear point of clarification is like when the disciples came to the tomb, it was on the first day of the week, but he was already gone. So for them, when they came on the first day of the week, does that negate the 4th commandment? And how do I resolve that? So that's like another thing of clarification. Next one is like Christmas and Easter. Christmas, at least back in the 1st century, that was Saturnalia, a pagan festival, and Easter back then is Ishtar, festival of Ishtar. These are like pagan festivals. In Leviticus 23 talks about God has this list of these are my appointed times. These are my times that you mark off on your calendar. These are times that I want to meet with you. So you have, at least for me, on this journey of clarification of these things, because at the end of the day, I was thinking of, if I am a disciple of Yeshua, my life should mirror his. It should parallel his. These things that I just mentioned, I would have to have some clarity to them and clarify them. Where do I stand on those? Because in the church, they weren't really well, they were thought of in different ways. So anyway, this really started in 1996 is when that's when I found the book of the Jewish New Testament. So from 1996 through 2020, we had all these 24 years of clarifying these things. And so when you get to 2020, as we know what happened, we have this strange new disease that initially it just affects elderly. You don't have to worry about it. Then we have the lockdown in March. And then myself, April 2nd is when I went into the hospital with COVID. And I guess another interesting thing that I relate to what happened to me, very interesting thing, is that I was in the hospital from April, the beginning of April to June 15th. And at least in Judaism, that's like a very significant time, because that is the time from Passover to, most people know as Pentecost, in Hebrew, Shavuot. 7 weeks after Passover is this other time of God, when God revealed the word of God on Mount Sinai. And so it's very interesting, like in Judaism, that this time is called Nisan. The month is called Nisan, and Nisan is known as the month of miracles. So it's very interesting that on this time that I went into the hospital, there was like all of this miraculous stuff that happened, because in Judaism, during Nisan, that's the month of miracles. That's where the last 3 plagues came out, the splitting of the sea, the destruction of the Egyptians, the feeding of the Israelites in the desert by manna, something that's not natural. All this stuff happens in Nisan. And so for me, when I went into the hospital, it was during this time. So it's kind of something very interesting. So anyway, so to get to the main point of how this affected me is when I got out of the hospital, I was aware of something that was profound, something that happened to me. And the thing I would say that really came out of this was just plain gratitude. But gratitude, it was, I was grateful to being alive, but the main initial one why I was grateful is that my father, my parents, they were married for 47 years, and my dad had been he'd been gone for like 7 years at that point. But even now, I think that my mom still grieves, because they were married for 47 years and had a relationship longer than that, and to have him die, that she is still grieving that. And for me, I was grateful because I didn't want or wouldn't want my mom to have to bury my father and then also bury me, a child. Sometimes that does happen in life, where a parent may have to bury like a spouse and a child. I'm grateful that my mom didn't have to do that. So I was grateful for that. But for me personally, the thing that I was grateful for life, and I was grateful that God did this. But the thing that for me, it wasn't enough to just say that I was appreciative um, for God for doing this, but I wanted to show this in action. And I think the gratitude led to an increase of love, which led to an increase of being obedient. I was thinking that I thank God for what he did, but what is even greater, what would God like in this situation? He would want obedience to come out of this. And so that's what I thought. That's what I took from this, that I can say, and even Jesus said that if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And the same thing, that the best way to show your gratitude is to love me by being obedient to me. So that would be, I would say, the thing that this whole experience, that it kindled within me like a desire to want to be more serious, I guess, with my service to God, and to be more obedient, and to not to just show my love and appreciation by being obedient to God, even on a higher level than I was before. But to continue the journey, this whole thing that I went through, it stirred up in me uh, curiosity. Why did this happen? I mean, why did this happen? Not in the sense of that, oh, this shouldn't happen to me, but it was more in a sense of, when something happens, there is a reason why. What was the reason why this happened to me? Was this to catch my attention, or what did this happen, and why? And for me, it caused me to really do a lot of introspection about, was this, what was the cause of this, why did it happen? So there was a lot of curiosity with this. And so for me, I kind of like to look at the world. You have the physical world, and you have like the spiritual world, and the spiritual world is contained within the physical world. So we look at the things that happen around us, but then if we go deeper, what is the spiritual source, or the spiritual relationship to what goes on around us? So I was curious about why this happened to me. And so going back to 2020, that we had COVID happening. So you had people being touched by this, and not just this, but things that were going on just in the world in general. You had people, dying from COVID, people losing their jobs because of this. You had increases of anxiety because the stability that was in life prior to 2020 has just been turned on its head. And so there's a lot of anxiety and depression going up. And the main thing that caught my attention is that it didn't matter where you were on earth, that we were all in the same situation. We were all in the same boat. Didn't matter if you were a Jew or Gentile, or you're male or free, male or female, black or white, Republican, Democrat. Everyone's kind of in the same situation. For me, that's not something that's a coincidence. That's like, there's something about that. So my curiosity was, what is it? What's all this stuff that's going around? And there's like a relationship between the instability and death and just everything that happened to me in the hospital, and then also in the larger world, you have a similar thing happening to everyone around at the time also. So it was very intriguing, and I just wanted to know what that was. So it was bringing me really on a journey of what is happening and why is it happening? But more importantly, what am I going to do in response to this? And so at this point, I was starting at least a second journey, and I didn't know exactly where it was going to lead, but it was something that I needed to pursue because I wanted to see or understand, at least from maybe God's perspective. Why did this come into the world? Why is it coming into the world? What is my reaction to this? And so with that, that will draw part 2 to a close. And I guess I will see you at another point.
Okay, everybody, that's part 2. Stay tuned for part 3. To be determined when the time has arrived. We'll see you then.